Hello and welcome
Hello.
everyone. Hello and welcome everyone to our Vistatec Life Sciences in Focus podcast. Fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts. This is a space where we interview life sciences experts once a month, and I'm your host, Karen Tkaczyk. And I am so delighted to talk with today's guest, Sara Nichols, whose personal and professional story intrigued me when we first met. She's currently the president at the McCreadie Group, and she's going to tell us more about the McCreadie Group and its products. And Sarah's had a fascinating career, and I'm grateful to have you here today, Sara. So, can we start with your origin story? Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about your origin story and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my origin story in the world of healthcare technology started when I was in my last year of secondary education. I had a surgery that was fairly routine and went catastrophically wrong. And I spent the first 8 weeks of my last year of high school bedridden and in various states of paralysis as a result of a medication interaction. And rather than make me make up the work that I missed in my anatomy and physiology class, my teacher said, "You know what? I want you to go learn what happened, and that will make up everything that you missed." And so, this is back in the day when you had to go to the bowels of the hospital library and sit right with the photocopier and your pencil. And I did. That's where my love for life sciences and health really took off. um, and it empowered me. That knowledge empowered me as I went and moved out on my own and went to college. And I pursued a degree in something totally different, but found my way back. Um, that was really my anchor. I kept thinking like this is what I love. This is where my passion is. And so I took my career in tech and I married it with that, and have spent the last 2 decades working in healthcare technology. I've been with the McCreadie Group now almost 2 years. They came and poached me from another organization, and it has been delightful. It's the perfect alignment of loving the very nerdy side of healthcare and life sciences and pharmacology, with my passion for technology and workflows and operations and making things more efficient.
Well, isn't it? It's remarkable how often it is an early experience that shapes us and helps drive our passions, isn't it? Um, yeah. So tell us more then about the McCreadie Group. What kind of company it is and about Vestigo. It's not a name that a lot of our listeners might have heard before. So tell us more about that, please.
Yeah, McCreadie Group has a product called Vestigo, and it is a compliance first platform for managing protocols in complex research environments. So essentially, we are involved in the research pharmacies. We are a tool that helps automate workflows. It helps improve compliance and accountability, and it improves inventory management, reduces the opportunity for human error in very critical spaces. So everything from private research organizations to large academic medical centers and all the way in between. We started, was commercially released in 2004. So this is our
Mhm.
22nd anniversary this year. The current naming came in 2012. And we have been growing ever since. And it's really exciting because we are still at the stage where we're incredibly nimble, and therefore we are able to respond to market needs very quickly. but we also have so much experience. So one of the things that I find challenging in the health tech space is there's a lot of great technology that is shoehorned into uh, the healthcare space that operationally might look like it is applicable, but misses some of the marks of when you get into this very specific space in life sciences and clinical research. And one of the things that makes McCreadie Group unique and its products unique is that it was founded by a research pharmacist who
Yeah.
also happened to be a computer scientist, right? And
Yeah.
we continue that tradition. We have pharmacists on our product staff. Our COO is a pharmacist. We have everyone, we actually have a requirement that everyone who works in customer support um, be a clinician with a background experience using Vestigo in a real world clinical trial setting. So the product is designed from the ground up, and the people that support it have worked in the industry, have been hands-on, and I think that is something that's unique in a space that's beleaguered by technological options but not necessarily great tech solutions.
I love that everyone's used it in the real world.
Mhm.
That's a well, I mean that makes something very easy to sell, right? If people who've actually used it they, in the real world know that it works, and
Right.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
great
no,
because
that's great.
if you want to understand how to better improve your outcomes and sometimes you get into technology and you're like, holy cow, this sounds amazing and I don't know how to make it how do I drive value from day one? Right.
Hmm.
And that's something that is from the person who's training to this person who is answering support calls to the person that is helping with your account. Every single one of them can give you insights on how to improve workflows, drive outcomes, that sort of thing. And we're seeing 43% in revenue growth, the ability to drive real dollars as a result. And, we're seeing 83% reduced time in documentation, right? So we're seeing
Yeah,
real numbers as a
yeah,
result of that.
yeah. Great. That's great ROI. All right, let me ask you a broader, bigger picture question then. So, the state of clinical research. So we know that 2025 was not an easy year, right?
No.
So let's I want to say draw a veil over it, but we can't. But anyway, so let's talk about the state of clinical research in 2026. What are you seeing happening? What shifts are you starting to see changing? I know you went to SCRS in Europe recently as well.
I
So the
did, yeah.
Society of Clinical Research Sites, right, in a
Yes.
conference in Europe.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing, what movement you're seeing for 2026 in the space.
It's really interesting because I think for a long time, clinical research has been seen as primarily US centric with with a growing global presence. And I think 2025, for the first time, we're seeing that really be knocked on its head, right? The US is no longer the majority of the studies, right? We've been surpassed by China, according to a study done by SCRS, actually. And the UK is not far behind. The EU is not far behind. Australia is not far behind, right? And that is really exciting because what that says is that we're going to have better data. We're going to have better outcomes because we're looking at broader populations across the globe. And as our world becomes increasingly mobile and increasingly globally interconnected, it matters that we have that kind of representation and that kind of perspective because everybody's coming in with, their own perspective, but different genetic makeups, different backgrounds. The WHO says that India is surprisingly, I think for some of us, India is right on the cusp of breaking into what would be considered a global research power, right? And that's really interesting to me. And I think one of the things, right, that does is the number one silent tax on timelines is change, right? So while this is all great, we also see, and you speak about 2025, the disruption in funding models, right? Particularly in the US, which have, I think, fueled some of the global acceleration, right? The EU is looking into how do we get to trial stage faster? How do we get trials approved faster? How do we shrink those timelines so that we can be more competitive in the global market, right? The same thing, the UK has got some legislation that just passed and some new legislation as well that's looking at the same thing. Um, but all of this change, while great, also puts a heavy burden on timelines because you've got to look at things differently. You've got to work differently. Um, and one of the things that we're seeing with the globalization is that complex protocols are becoming, those complex studies are becoming more and more common. So there's a tough study, and it's a couple of years old, but it's not very old. But it talks in the last 10 years the number of protocols that would be considered complex has risen from just below half to about three-quarters of all studies are considered complex trials. And that the mean number of amendments to those trials
Mm.
has risen to 3.3, which is huge.
Yeah.
And how do you take all of that that's happening all at the same time, complexity and change in funding models and globalization, and this is going to be the year, I think, where the industry starts to have to reckon with that and figure out like how do we
Yeah.
take all of that and
Yeah.
drive even more success?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're seeing that. We see the effects, of course. Well, first of all, every country that's added, every locale requires a new language, a new version
Right.
of the informed consent forms. At least not everyone translates protocols for all countries, but those protocols, when we do have to translate those, they can be exceedingly complex. And you're right, the amendments are killer. Every amendment drives translation business, right? So we
Oh,
see
yes.
those amendments.
Right.
Because every time
Right.
someone has an amendment, it comes right back to us and they say, okay, Karen, we've got red lines.
Yeah.
Let's,
Well, and the other
we've got
part of
red
that
lines.
too is it's so surprising to me, right? We're in 2026 and we're somehow already a quarter of the way through 2026, which is just surprising to me every day that I wake up and I'm like, holy cow. But it surprises me that in 2026, in a highly scientific, cutting edge discipline, we're still so dependent on paper, right?
Oh,
And
if,
and and those
okay.
amendments drive more paper,
Mhm.
right? Those funding changes drive more paper, the
Yep.
regulations drive more
Oh,
paper. And whether your paper is digital as a
mhm.
PDF or actual physical pieces of paper that you're storing
Yeah.
in binders in the very small spaces that research pharmacies are granted, right? We're not occupying the top floors with the ortho and the neurosurgeons, right?
Mhm.
Um, it astounds me that that is still the standard operating norms. And I think that's one of the things that's going to have to evolve to keep up with these changes, to keep up with the globalization, because the only way you can really drive simplicity in a complex study is by streamlining workflows,
Yeah.
enabling technology, right? And it
Right.
helps with the translations
Oh,
as
of course it
well,
does.
right? And those
We
and
can
those
connect
language
in and
management
out.
pieces, right?
Absolutely. Oh, we I think it's fair to say I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I can
And
imagine.
and there are amazing models out there of streamlined workflows, and then there are not so amazing models that we still see all the time. So yeah, it's all about the connectors and the tech stacks being aligned and talking to each other, and it saves. I mean, it saves everyone so much time and money. There's no
And
question.
it enables people to work at top of license, right? You don't become a research pharmacist because you want to shuffle paper or even because you want to sit in front of a computer all day, right? Um, and it enables people to do what they're best at, what they're licensed to do, what their passion is, and simplifies that administrative component so that people are able to do the work that they do best. right?
Yeah,
And that's really
absolutely.
important because that's where you get good science. That's where you get good
Yeah,
research. That's where you get great outcomes, right? Which
that's
ultimately
right.
comes back to the patient
Yes, it
and
does. It
me, who
does.
was in this hospital bed, right? Like when I was
Yeah.
17 years old. And that's where my passion for pharmacology and research began, right? And that's that curiousness, that light went on, and it took me a few years, but that's what I think about every time is how does this impact the patient?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And you can take it always take it back to that personal experience. Well, all of us are patients in some way, right? We can all take
Absolutely.
some
Yeah.
element back to our personal experience, but you have
Right.
an intense and early personal experience to take it back to. So, okay, so we think things are looking up then. We agree things are
I
looking
do.
up, but
Absolutely.
there's a long way to go. Um, I liked what you said about cutting down. You talked about reducing timelines and things. So we've talked about micro leaks in the past.
Mhm.
Would you like to expound on those a little bit and talk about
Yeah.
that?
So one of the things that is really fascinating that I think a lot of industry outsiders, so people who are looking in but not participating in the industry, realize is the complexity of setting up study budgets, right? And sites saying, okay, well, we think we can do it for this. And one of the challenges that exists is that when you're setting up those study budgets, when you're setting up those operational workflows, right, it's really easy to get the big stuff right? You know, there's going to be so many staff and you know, there's going to be, these kinds of things. But what we're seeing really is the biggest threat to fiscal and then operational success and clinical success because they're all tied together, right? It is micro leaks in the workflow, right? It's the having to redo something. It is the missing a step in accountability. It is getting audited and missing a compliance component. It is having to have, having your workflow change and maybe there's not everything is documented, or you are hiring new people, right? There's so much fluidity in the market, people changing jobs and organizations, and how do you train someone? And that's something that can be a huge barrier to success, not only for the site, but for the trial sponsor as well, right? If you're not getting good data and that trial has to be thrown out, or the trial gets delayed, or you're a site and you're not getting enough money to cover. You can only take on so many studies where you're not recouping at least your costs, but hopefully more so that you can continue to invest in driving additional study support. And, there's simple things like, how many steps does it take to do something, right? So if you look at traditional workflow management, which originated in the manufacturing industry, right? And things like Six Sigma with Toyota and that, um, it's steps to do something. That's where the kitchen triangle comes from, right? When you're designing a kitchen, your workflow in a kitchen, it's the exact same process in an operational, in a clinical setting. It might not be physical steps, but it is the number of steps that it takes to do something. And are you maximizing that? And are you aware of where those leaks are? And so when we work with people, we're helping identify those, but we're one part of the process. But that's something that's really important is as you're designing a study budget, as you're looking, where are those micro leaks? Where can you put that? Because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in change, right? Is plugging those leaks that are causing a drain that you're not even seeing.
Yeah, yeah. And we know that sites are sites suffer from, let's call it tech fatigue, right? Technology. They
Yes.
they have 17 different solutions for this sponsor. They have to use these four, and for this one,
Everything has a
right?
different login, nothing talks to each other. And that too is a micro leak, right? Every piece that is independent, every piece that requires you to log in, right? Outside an SSO or log in separately. That's a micro leak. That's an efficiency micro leak. And those few seconds over, a team over a
Yeah.
year adds up to hours and
Yeah.
thousands and hundreds of thousands sometimes of dollars.
Yeah. Well, I am sure our listeners can tell that Sarah and I could talk about this for quite some time, but we ought to come to an end. So before we do that, is there anything else you'd like to share with your audience, with our audience? Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I
somewhere
think
you'll,
I think the big thing is right, like I think we're on the cusp of one of the greatest opportunities for the industry that that has happened at least this century, if not, of all time. Um, I mean, there's so many amazing things, right? We have so many more regulatory bodies who are working together, right? When you have a regulatory body that's saying, how do we make this easier? That's great news, right? Because sponsors want it to be easier, sites want it to be easier, right? Everybody in the process, we can all agree on so many of these things. And when everybody can agree on the challenges and the opportunities, the solutions start to become very natural and start to become very collaborative. And I think, if we are good as an industry at productively navigating change, and being willing to give up things that might not serve us efficiently, right? The way that we've always done something that's a little bit of an emotional support process, right? Because it's comfortable. If we're
nicely
willing
put.
to give up a little bit of that, right, that gives us that, and then we accept the change and disruption are permanent, right? That gives us the opportunity to create standardization, traceability, reconciliation, speed to market, speed to cures, speed to treatment, right? I think that's the other thing. And the thing that I love so much is that this is a really good industry to never lose sight of the ultimate piece, which is helping patients be healthier, right? Saving lives, making lives better, improving that quality of life. And if we embrace that change and we say, okay, I'm going to give up this thing, this pet process that I love so much, and I'm going to try something new that's going to make me more efficient or work better in pursuit of these common goals, we're going to see a radical transformation in how we're able to drive speed to results.
Well, yes. Can I echo your sentiment? I don't have anything insightful to add. That was lovely. That was a yes, yes. One can only hope that people will be willing to get slightly out their comfort zone and make
Yeah.
those changes, right? Yep, all in our own way. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your insights. It's been a great
Absolutely.
pleasure. It's been a
Thanks for
pleasure.
having me. It's always great to chat with you, Karen.
Thank you. Add to our audience, this Life Sciences in Focus podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other leading platforms, as well as on YouTube if you prefer to watch our conversation. Please make sure to tune in again next month for Vistatec Life Sciences in Focus, fascinating conversations with global life sciences experts.